And lastly, you ask, are you deluding yourself thinking that you can get to that point where you sit down, record for an hour, and it's a perfect podcast? Yes and no. I know that's harsh to say, yes and no, but I'm going to say it. The reason I'm saying yes, I think it is somewhat delusional to think that someone can jump on a mic or a camera and make a perfect video or podcast in the first take. That doesn't happen. In one take, nobody makes anything perfect ever. I think the reason you may think people do this is because you are far less critical of others as you are to yourself. You may listen to a podcast and think, wow, that's amazing. They were perfect the entire time. But that podcaster may listen to that and think, I suck. I suck at everything I do. That was a terrible episode. I think as opposed to thinking other people are able to do this and make a perfect podcast, you need to apply the same standards that you apply to them to yourself. I know in the past I have restarted recording 50 times for this podcast. This was years ago because I kept screwing up and I wanted to have a perfect one take all the way through the entire episode. And whenever I would screw up, I would start over. I started to hate making this show because of that. I had to let that idea go. I had to let the idea go that I would be able to make it an hour without having any edits, without screwing up once. Are there some people who will be able to record for an hour and a half and be able to not edit the show? Yes, they've been at it for a very long time. The idea or the group that comes to mind is the No Agenda Show. They record 3 hours. There's no editing. It's live to tape. And I think, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I do that? They're professionals. Adam Curry has been on the radio since the 80s or 90s. Of course he's going to be better at this than me. Of course he's going to. John C. Dvorak's been podcasting since 2005 or 2006. Of course he's going to be better than me. Of course he is. I should not hold myself to those same standards. And if you listen to their show, they say, yeah. They have filler words. I try not to have filler words. They have filler words. That's fine. I also really don't like their processing. I think their processing is bad. But to each their own. And I think that's important. I think it's important to remember and judge yourself in context with everybody else. Don't necessarily compare yourself to others, but if you're judging a show based on some more lenient standards and then you look at yourself and hold yourself to standards that are 10 times higher, don't do that. Then as far as why I don't think it's delusional, I absolutely think you can sit down, that you can get to a point where you sit down, record for an hour, spend 5 minutes editing, chopping off a false start and a false ending, and go. I absolutely think that is a skill that you can get to. It just takes time to develop. And if you're not putting out videos and iterating upon your process and improving and practicing, I don't think you will get to that point. So I think you ought to, let me just summarize my tips, I guess, because I think that'll be a good way to end the response.